morning. Thanks for joining us either live now or later after the recording is posted. I want to start off by saying I'm sorry, and I express my sympathy to all of you living out on the West Coast. As I've watched the weather, it looks like it's extremely hot out there, and I also read stories about, the drought and, alarmingly low levels of water in the different reservoirs and lakes. And I used to live in California, Northern Cal, and I remember, some of the summer times in Sacramento, and the wind could come up and just be this devastating, hot, dry wind that just made you feel miserable. Even though it was a dry heat, and people say that, oh, it's a dry heat, it was still miserable. And I hear it's even worse, so many apologies and sympathies for what you're going through out there. Try and stay cool and take care of yourself. Drink lots of water, stay hydrated. Because I think it's on the West Coast and even on the East Coast a little bit more, like the Midwest and stuff isn't so bad. But be careful out there. It's hot and dry. I've been reading stories about people just, walking down the street or walking to work or something and, getting so dehydrated they suffer heat stroke. I did have heat stroke once. It is absolutely terrifying and miserable. I was playing tennis and I wasn't well hydrated, and I remember it didn't hit me right at the moment. It kind of like creeps up on you, and afterwards I even stopped. I had rested, I was in the shade, I started drinking some water, and it just kept coming and coming, and boy, eventually you just couldn't move, and your breathing was rapid and shallow, and you really think like, oh my goodness, this is horrible. And it's not a fun experience. So stay hydrated, stay cool. We're not too bad here in Lincoln, Nebraska right now. It's warm and sunny, hot, it's kind of hot, but it's not anything like the triple digits you guys are getting out west. But we are going for a ride tomorrow. Tomorrow being July 4, where most people are celebrating and having barbecues and doing fireworks. We're going to be on the road, so, and kind of theme with that, I thought we'd show one of Miranda's stories that talks about tires, because anytime we get on the road, I'm always thinking about tires and oil. It's always kind of a gamble if you don't think about it whenever you go on a drive, whether you're going to get a flat tire or not. Now that I've said that, we'll probably get one. Anyway, one of our mustard seed stories, faith-building experiences from life, was about tires, and Miranda has a good story about that we're going to show right now on Mustard Seed Stories. Oh, what you reading?
Oh, just a dab of news.
Yeah. I thought what about Colby? You're gonna text him?
Yeah, I gotta get back with him. Because they will be coming over for the picnic. We just gotta figure out when and where, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are we having?
Ooh, all sorts of yummy things like potato salad and deviled eggs and the Alfredo.
Oh.
I'm gonna make Alfredo.
Oh, Alfredo. Okay.
Yes.
Double Alfredo, deviled eggs, because Colby would eat all the eggs, and I want eggs.
And then we're gonna make the Big Franks.
Yes.
And the Luminos.
Yes. Okay, so this is gonna take me a second. Why don't you just practice telling the story to the camera? I'm gonna keep working on the lights because I need to get the green screen just right.
Okay.
So just practice telling it.
Okay. Well, welcome you all to another Mustard Seed story today. And this week we're going to be talking about, actually, I went to the airport to pick up my youngest son, Colby, because he had just been down to a wedding. And it was late.
This?
It's been almost 4 years ago. 4 years ago at this time of year.
That's why I don't remember it. Okay,
yeah. So went on over to Omaha and picked him up. It was nearly midnight.
Why wasn't I there?
Because you had a headache or something, and so you stayed home. But thank goodness, when the tire blew on the freeway, no less, and we called him because we couldn't find all the pieces to the jack. And
Oh yeah, I remember this now.
yeah,
Yes, because you guys had Blue, it was on the interstate, and Colby called, or somebody called,
yeah.
and he didn't know what a jack looked like, or he couldn't find
No.
it because it wasn't there.
Well, right, because you know how they are. They're underneath.
Underneath it, yeah,
yeah.
that's right.
Well,
I remember now. Yeah,
it was dark.
Yeah, it was.
And as many times as I have said that I could change a tire on my own if I have to, in reality, I have never had to. There's always been someone there to help me change the tire. Oh, never mind.
Oops.
I help them change the tire. I need to stand there and watch them, sort of. Yeah, that's always my part. But anyways, and I don't think Colby, he had never changed a tire really on his own either. So thank goodness a couple people stopped by.
How are these things possible?
I don't know. Like he was a computer guy. It was
I
it was my other son who, you know,
Oh, Ryan. Yeah,
rock
yeah,
climbed and
Ryan did
fixed the engines and changed the tires and things like that. So, you know, you got to have a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So, anyways, there we were with the donut on finally. I think we used like some pen or a pencil to jack the thing up because that was a piece that was missing. So, anyways, got home and there we were driving around on a donut for a while. And actually an embarrassingly long time because it was one of those things like you think you're going to have the money to pay for a whole new set of tires, but then you don't. So, and none of that was Brett's job. This wasn't my fault. It's entirely Brett's job.
Don't say it like that. Jeez. You're gonna think, what a slacker.
We're practicing, Brett. We're
Yeah,
practicing.
we're practicing. All right, we're
We'll
practicing.
leave that part out.
Okay.
So, anyways, okay. So, you know, I think it actually been like 2 months, and we were still driving around on the donut. So, every now and again, it would cross my mind. Well, why don't you ask God for a set of tires? And I'd always think, no, I'm not asking God for a set of tires because we can do this. We can get a set of tires. Yeah. Well, after 2 months of that was my attitude. Finally, one day, I was crossing across the kitchen, and our kitchen is probably about this wide, so it didn't take very long. And that little thought ran through my head again. Why don't you ask God for a set of tires? And I said, fine, I'll ask God for a set of tires.
All right, so when we actually do this, remind me to say something about whenever God says, you should ask me for this, and we go, no, I can do this on my own, this is not usually a good reaction. Not a good reply.
But you know, I'd asked God for stuff in the past, and God is always very generous with us.
This is true.
He really is.
You think of things I never think of. Yeah.
So it seemed like one of those times, well, why should I bother God for something that we can clearly do ourselves, right? Because 2 months later, we were still driving on the donut.
We don't need God, we can do this. Yes.
Yeah, so anyways, there I was walking across the kitchen, and I said, well, all right, God, I said, I don't know how you are going to provide a set of tires, but I'm asking you for money for tires, and I know you can do it, but I don't know if you want to. So there you go, I've asked. Well, that was on a Wednesday, I think, and on Friday, the doorbell rang, and I went and I answered the door, and it was our church secretary was standing there, and she'd been out to the church. She had some mail collected to give to Brett and such, and then when she was done giving me that, she pulled this check out of her notebook, and she said, you know, there was someone at church who noticed that you needed a set of tires. It was only obvious, right? That you needed a new set of tires, and so they've given $500 so that you can get a new set of tires.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And I was so excited because Brett had priced a new set of tires at Sam's, and it was going to be $550 out the door. And so $500, we were only going to put $50 in. And so that was really exciting. Well, I was super excited that now I was no longer going to be driving on a donut. Because if you've ever read the paperwork on it, it says you should
No longer
only,
than 500 miles.
No, you should only drive 50 miles, I think, on one of those. Maybe 100, I can't remember now, but 50 or 100 miles, no more than that. And so after 2 months, we had definitely gone more than 50 to 100 miles on the donut. But anyways, yeah, where was I?
You were talking about we shouldn't go
Oh
longer.
yeah,
than 30
that's
miles.
right. That's right.
And you were about
so,
to blame me for something.
So here we were, finally had the money, right? So I was so excited that Brett was going to go get a new set of tires for the car. Well, Brett just so happened to be really busy right then because it was camp meeting, and so he was working as a pastor, and so he had to be over there for, I think he was helping out in the early teens, and so he, he was busy all day with meetings and pastors meetings and things like that. So that week went by, another whole week went by with not a new set of tires.
I was busy.
So then we get into the next week.
Doing God's work.
And
I was busy doing God's work.
I don't know exactly if I don't think he got them the week after either. So I was trying to be kind and patient and not nag. And so I tried not to mention anything more than maybe once a week. I may have hit twice, I'm not sure. But so yeah, I think we went a second week without tires. So by the time we got the third week, I was getting a little, yeah, let's mention it at least twice. So I mentioned it again. I said, so when are you going to go down and get a set of tires for the car? And just so you know, we works for us. I, do most of the traditional clean the house and wash the dishes and cook the meals, and Brett does the other things like takes out the trash and things like that.
Yes. Mwah.
So, yeah.
It's very traditional. She says, do this. I say, yes, dear. No, that's true.
But,
I tried actually some things I can fix, some
I
things I
mean,
can't.
when I was single and I needed a new set of tires, I drove myself to the tire shop and I got them.
Yeah.
So, I
That's
can do
true.
it, but it's not my favorite thing to do. Honestly, I'd rather go grocery shopping. And cook, if I dare say that.
Yeah, actually. I'd rather you cook too, because that's
Yeah.
really
We'd
good.
all rather I could.
That's true. That's
So,
very true.
yeah. Anyways, so there we were starting on the third week, and I said, well, why don't you go ahead and when are you going to go ahead and get that set of tires? He said, oh, well, I get down to Sam's, and then I'm just going to have to sit there and wait because there's other people ahead of me,
When's that going
and
to
it could
Sam's?
take hours because you'd price the tires at
Oh, it's
$5.50
Sam's, and
for a
Dad always
set
used
there,
Sam. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I said, well, just make an appointment. And he said,
That's true. That's true.
So it was a few days later, actually it was on a Thursday, I remember. He called him up, and anyways, I had no idea when he was calling him. But afterwards he said, I decided to try a couple of tire shops that were closer to where we live. And so I called this one tire shop and I explained to him what I wanted. And the guy said, you know what, on Monday only, I have a special sale. You can buy 3 tires and get the 4th for free. And for what you're looking for, it'll be $450 out the door.
That's right. I remember that because we had the money. Oh, we're going to have to pay for it. And yeah, that's right. That was
Yeah.
actually cool.
Yeah, $450. And so now we weren't $50 that we had to put in. It was $50 left over. And so that was just one of those really super exciting stories that God clearly had the plan. And it was one of those things where, trust me, it was not lost on me that I was in a big hurry to get this done.
And the whole time I was on God's timing.
Clearly, Brett was a little slow as far as I was concerned.
Wait a minute.
'Cause
You
I like
can't
to-
say it like that.
I like
that
to-
was a little slow.
I like
My
to make
husband's
the
traditional
plan.
and slow.
Make the
Okay.
plan and
Make
get
the
it
plan.
done. But anyways, yeah, there we were, and I have to admit, I recognize that it's not my plan, it's not my time, and God works all things together for good to those who love Him. And since we love Him, we can know that all things that He does are working together for our good.
Keep looking at the camera.
Keep looking at the camera. Hello,
Yeah.
people.
Okay.
We're so glad you joined us this
Yes,
week.
we are when we actually
Yes.
do this. That was good. Is that it?
That's it.
Oh, okay. So where do you want to actually be when we tell the story? Because it can be anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world?
Yeah.
Ooh, where do you want to go?
Let's go to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Oh, no. No, I want to go, maybe the highest mountain.
I'd have to Google it. I don't know what that is.
We could go.
Mount Shasta. No, that was.
Wouldn't that be fun
Yeah.
to stand on top of the mountain in the frigid cold. Yeah, or London Bridge.
Oh, okay, London Bridge.
Or
I've
Paris,
never been there.
or Paris, a little shop in
Aspen
Paris
would love
somewhere.
Paris.
Okay.
All right, Aspen would love Paris, so let's go to Paris.
Yes, and we'll have some yummy dessert.
Okay, I'll go to
Yes.
Paris.
Okay.
Yes, that was a fun story. It was a fun video to make too. I think we've showed it one other time, but it was still fun to show. Continuing on with our choosing random things to make a theme for today. Actually, during the interim there, I stepped outside to check our weather, and it is warm. It's not particularly hot yet, but it is warm and nice. So that's the weather from Lincoln, Nebraska, for probably nobody that cares. Anyway, it is July, and so it's, a typical July day here in Nebraska. And as some of you have celebrated, and actually some people have this as a yearly tradition, it's called Christmas in July. And I've done it at some churches I've been at where we do a Christmas program just for fun in July. And so in keeping with that theme, I thought it'd be fun to show one of Aspen's Christmas-themed videos. So this one is about the science of baking with the theme Christmas. So Christmas baking in July.
So what's your favorite Christmas treat? Is it peanut butter cookies, chocolate chip cookie, apple pie, cherry pie, figgy pudding, dancing sugar plums, twisty candy cane, shortbread, gingerbread, pumpkin pie, baked Alaska, cherry jubilee? Whatever your palate is partial to during Christmas time, sit back and think about it as we talk about the science behind baking. Baking is a science. Almost all baking recipes call for flour, eggs, sugar, fat, and a leavening agent, like baking soda or powder. Baking calls for a standard sequence of steps, called a recipe. So if you follow all the baking instructions precisely, the end product is always the same. That's what science is about: accuracy in its methods, and results that can be reproduced consistently. And for us, results that aren't just consistent, but also tasty. But now there's lots of physics and chemistry in baking and cooking, but we're going to talk about 3 scientific principles about baking that will also show us a bit about life. Principle number 1, purpose. In baking, every ingredient has a purpose. For example, in a cake, flour gives the structure, eggs bind the ingredients, baking powder and baking soda make it rise, fats like butter and oil make it less chewy, and sugar sweetens and keeps it moist. Principle number 2, variety. Most recipes have a combination of ingredients that are sweet or sour, and they may or may not taste so great by themselves. To illustrate this, let's go up to the kitchen for an experiment. So here we are in our Christmas kitchen, and today we'll be using baking as our object lesson. So here we have a bunch of different ingredients, and by themselves, they aren't really that special. But when you mix them together in different ways, they can radically change each other. So to illustrate this, I have a volunteer.
Hi, I'm the excited, motivated volunteer.
He was very excited when he signed up.
I am beside myself. See?
Yes, so we are going to blindfold you.
What? You didn't say anything about
Yes.
blindfolding.
Yes.
But, Miranda! Ah.
So we're just going to tie
Well, you gotta earn those
Scarf.
Christmas cookies you've been eating.
Oh, man.
That tight enough?
Yes. I can't see anything.
That's the point.
Oh, okay.
So, first we're going to start with number 1.
Number 1.
Over here.
Okay.
Right here. Ready? Open your mouth.
Oh, God! Ah! Ah! That's horrible. It burns. Oh, give me something to drink. Give me a... Ah. What is it?
It's vanilla.
Oh, that's horrible. Okay. Oh. All right. What's the next one?
So this is number 2.
Number 2.
It's right here. Open your mouth.
No, no, not so bad.
Yeah.
It was crunchy.
Yeah.
All right, I can deal with that one.
Okay. Are you ready for number 3?
Number 3.
Number 3. We have...
Oh, that first one was...
Open your mouth.
Okay, it's powdery. And very powdery. Ah, it's sweet, but powdery. And sticky.
Sticky?
It's sticky.
Sticky. And sticks to your shirt.
Mm. Okay, those last 2 weren't bad. They were
Okay.
nice.
Ready for number 4.
Yeah, those
Okay.
were 2 good ones. Oh! Ah! Oh! That's horrible. That's nasty. Oh, it was dry and...
It is, yeah. It's kind of supposed to be that way.
Mmm. Oh, that one was not near as pleasant as the other 2. Not as bad as the first one, though.
That's good.
Okay. Is that it?
Yep.
Oh,
You may take your blindfold off.
man. Oh, jeez. So, what did I have?
You had vanilla.
Vanilla?
Mhm.
Okay.
Then you had sugar.
Ah, sugar. That one I could figure.
And then you had powdered sugar.
Oh, powdered sugar. That's why it was sticky and puffy.
And then you had flour.
Oh. Now that you said flour, now I can see.
Yeah.
Mmm. That was a mix of really nasty, strong, burning, with really sweet, and then less sweet but still pleasant, and then dry and I don't know. It was ugh. So that was an interesting experience.
So what have you learned from this experience?
To not let you blindfold me and feed me things. So that was them like all individually.
Yeah.
What do they all make? Or is that what you're going to do next?
Yes.
Oh,
Now
okay.
we're going to put them all together and see what they make.
Hopefully they taste better than they do individually.
Well, they should.
We'll see.
Principle number 3, results. What's your favorite kind of cake? Chocolate? Vanilla? Pumpkin? What about bread? What kind of bread do you like? White bread? Whole wheat bread? Pumpernickel?
I have a bread and it's called pumpernickel. Yum, yum, pumpernickel, pumpernickel bread. Hey!
Barney has a bread and it's called pumpernickel.
Yum, yum, pumpernickel, pumpernickel bread.
And if you're from the South, you might like biscuits. Now if I say flour, sugar, butter, eggs, and milk, and if I mix them all together, which one of these do you think they will make? Cake, bread, or biscuits? How about all 3? That's right, they all have the same ingredients. But how do they all come out so differently? It's because they all have different amounts of ingredients. Bread gets more flour than cake Cake has more sugar than biscuits, and biscuits has the least amount of butter. So, different amounts of the same things will give you different end results. So how is this all like life? Well, let's say that the end result, like cake, bread, or biscuit, is our lives, and the ingredients that goes into them are the experiences we have. So, principle number 1. Like every ingredient has a purpose in a recipe, every experience we have has meaning and influence in our lives. Principle number 2. Variety. In most recipes, there are sweet and sour ingredients. And like in our lives, we're going to have some sweet experiences, but there will also be some sour ones too. But, like in baking, God promises that He's going to mix everything up, bake it up right, and bring good out of all of it. And finally, principle number 3, result. We're all made of the same stuff, and God says that we're made in His image. For we are God's masterpiece. He created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the good things He planned for us long ago. And that's one sweet promise that we can live by.
Hey, Christmas in July. Wasn't that fun? We can tell it's July here too, because every now and then we'll hear a great big boom of fireworks going off, which I imagine we'll have to live with for the next few days, which is not fun. But yes, so yeah, it was baking Christmas cookies. I can't remember, what was it? Peanut butter cookies? Is that what you were making? Peanut butter cookies. And yeah, that was that's actually an illustration I've used, like live in churches when I'm doing sermons, and I'll bring people up and have them taste test certain things, blindfolded like we did. And it's like, sugar versus baking soda versus flour. Yes.
Yes, wasn't Brett the good sport to try all of those blindfolded, no less? Yeah, we're talking a little bit kind of about faith is worked in with what we're talking about today. And as we walk by faith, many times it feels as if God has blindfolded us and spoon feeding us stuff, sometimes it's sweet, sometimes it's sour, salty, and sometimes we just plain don't like it. So there were the 3 principles of baking, which was purpose, variety, and results. And that first one, purpose, we do know that all things work together for good to those that love God, and that's Romans 8:28. And the second half of this verse says, to them who are called according to His purpose, that all things work together for good. So there's your purpose, that all of those things, whether they are sweet or sour or salty or powdery or whatever, they all work together for God's good purposes towards us.
And the first part of that verse, sometimes people get hung on to them who are called according to His purpose. John actually explains a little bit more on that later in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, where everyone is called. And actually Paul says that in different places too. We are all children of God. We are all called. We are all created by Him. So don't get hung up on, for those who are called according to His purpose, that's everyone. We're all called.
Yes, we're all called. We may not all choose to answer the call, but we are all certainly called.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, variety. There is certainly plenty of variety in the walk of faith. A lot of variety. Mm-hmm. Because while Brett enjoyed some of those experiences, some of them weren't quite so pleasant. And that's how God builds our faith as well. Some experiences are fun, and others are not so fun. And
flour's the hardest one to get out, by the way. It just, no matter what you do, it just stays in your mouth.
But doesn't water and flour creates a glue, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So don't try and wash it down with water. Best to use Coke or some kind of soda.
Yeah, so results. As that's been pointed out, all of the things like biscuits and cake and such like that, bread, they all have the same ingredients, just in varying amounts. It is our purpose in life to live as God has called us, which is to love Him and love our fellow man. And so in each of those situations, God calls us to live that out. And in some situations, we add a little love. In other situations, we need to add a lot of love. And so it may come out as biscuits, or it may come out as banana bread, or it may come out as cake, but it is all part of a recipe. Those are all good edible things.
Which, by the way, if you don't know this, for those of you, you cannot put love on your list of ingredients if you're selling something.
Oh yeah, because I know for a while people were doing that.
Yes, and they ran afoul of a federal regulation by the FDA, who says all ingredients must be quantifiable. And they got one company up in Pennsylvania somewhere, and it was their muffins, and it had this ingredients, and the final one is all love,
yeah.
you know. And they actually sent them a letter and said, you cannot do this, you're in violation of regulation, whatever, and you will be fined if you continue this practice. And they made them take that off the label, which then other people heard, and they started taking it off their labels.
Yeah.
You cannot legally do that.
Yes.
The big man brother government.
But God's laws are different.
That's right.
Yes, and we're to live by and measure ourselves, what we're talking about today, by God's laws and not our own, basically. And so
It's a good thing his laws make sense.
Yeah, measuring, that's kind of interesting. I hadn't thought about that before, but we're talking about measurements for baking, and also we go through our lives measuring ourselves and wondering if we live up to our own goals and standards we have set for ourselves, or living up to what other people think we should be doing.
Which, if people think I don't do that, everyone does, to some
extent.
more than others.
Yeah.
But it's actually so ingrained in us because that's how we learn from being a baby all the way up in those early years. We only learn by comparing ourselves to the world and others around us. And this is like, I'm talking like baby and you know, here's this big adult, and what's that thing they're waving around? Oh, look, I have one. And I mean, we learn initially by comparison. So it's programmed into us, and we continue it through our lives, and some likely more than others. But it's this tendency to measure ourselves by others.
Yeah, that just reminds me a couple of times when my oldest daughter Randy was young. She may have been, I don't know, 8-ish or so. And I remember handing down some of her clothes to these little girls. One may have been only about 3 or 4, I think, and another one may have been about 5. And both of their moms came back to me, and the one said, her little girl said, "Oh, will I be pretty like Randy now?" Oh, wait, both of the little girls said that. They said, "Oh, will I be pretty like Randy now?" And I was like, these kids are under the age of 5, and they already feel as if they have to ask that.
Yeah.
A comparison like that. It was really, really sad.
Actually, I had the opposite experience. Well, I would get my brother's hand-me-downs, and he'd make fun of me. Oh, you get my hand-me-downs. And I'd say, yeah, but the difference is I make this look good.
Oh. Oh, well.
But pride is something we talk about next week.
Pride is something maybe we should deal with all of the time. Just get rid of it in general.
Yeah.
Trash is a good place for it to be. But anyway.
My trash is the best trash.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about measuring who we are and using the stories of Noah and the rich young ruler to illustrate that. And so when we look at others and we deem ourselves better than they are, that includes judging them. I don't know, it's so easy to say, thank goodness, I know I have my faults, but thank goodness I'm not like them. That's judging them, and it is also measuring ourselves by them. And so now we have looked at a sinful person, and we now measure our own goodness, our own righteousness, if you will, by sin. And that just makes absolutely no sense. We are to look to God and who He says that we are, and that's what we need to be looking to when we say, "Wow, who am I?" We look to that, not some other person who is clearly equally as sinful as we are, and we are equally as sinful as they are. They are not the one that we are to measure our own goodness and worth against, because it really doesn't even make sense, because now while we have dismissed that person, we're like, well, they're nobody next to me, or I wish I were like them. We have given that person the power to say who we are. Even
I mean,
if we
Jesus did this in the parable inadvertently when he talked about the vineyard workers who all got paid different wages. The ones who worked all day were comparing themselves to the others, and we're better than we deserve more. You know, and that wasn't the real main point of the parable, but that was very much a theme of them, like, well, I did more than them, and I'm better than that, and I should get more, and da-da-da. And
we live like that.
And we live like that.
Yeah.
Again, it's sort of this natural thing that, you know, as we get older, if we're aware of, we can make choices not to do that. And go, oh, wait, I'm comparing here, or I'm judging others by, you know, standards of, you know, comparing our two lives or whatever. And the truth is, you never know anybody well enough to judge or compare at all, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and so basically, while we think we have cast that person aside in disdain, we've actually given them the power to tell us who we are. And
yeah, we have a saying in 12-step, who's driving your bus? You, God, or are you letting somebody else or a circumstance or something drive your bus? Like, that's what you're giving them the power, you know, like, well, oh, I have to live up to that, you know, or whatever. And you're giving away your power to somebody else.
Yeah, so in the meantime, Psalm 139:14 says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are marvelous, and that my soul knows very well. And that is the measurement. And see, when we look to God for who we are, we can say, I am, because He is. We know He's the one who created us, and He has the plan for us. And so we can just rest in the peace that creates for us.
Yeah, I mean, and this is kind of getting off of our main topic, but you know, you compare ourselves to others, and am I as good as them? Am I as pretty as them? Am I manly as them, or whatever? And it's interesting. I think astronauts, astrophysicists, they have this interesting perspective, especially if you've been on the space station or to the moon or whatever. You know, you look back on Earth, and there's this, you know, ball of life hanging there in the solar system. And then as you study space, you know, you find out that space is this gigantic vacuum of death, you know, with nothingness everywhere. And, you know, it kind of, you can look at it in one sense of, you know, that's kind of like a big, empty, vast nothing. Or you look at it as like, wow, life is so precious. Every life, just because it's alive, which is what Christians say. It's like, you are special because you are created. It doesn't matter anybody anywhere else around you, just that you have, you know, a spark of life and you are a creation of God. That's your mark of measurement there. You're beautiful because, you know, it says, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Yes, you are. In a universe of mass nothingness and death, and you have life.
And it was also nothing that we did for ourselves. We didn't create ourselves like this.
Yeah.
God did.
Right. And that makes you unique and amazing just for being, because God made you.
Yes. And so then He tells us to love Him and love others. And that's our purpose. Our number one.
Which everyone is called.
Yes, and everyone is called.
Everyone is called according to that purpose.
Yes.
See how we brought that around? Oh, she did.
So anyways, is when I look to people or things to say who I am that I run into trouble.
Yeah.
And because that is when I say I am, because I have and because I do. And that's where we're going to use the story of the rich young ruler, because he illustrates that. He had his riches, and he also had, he used also the commandments, like the keeping of the commandments, to say who he was. So he also allowed the poor, who he would have looked down upon with disdain, as greatly inferior to him, to tell him who he was. He was better than. So interesting, the power he ascribed to those he thought were utterly inferior to himself.
Well, that's what he was taught.
That's true.
I mean, in that day, the actual religious belief would have been that if you were, well-to-do and healthy and God blessed you and loved you and you were, wonderful and accepted. And if you suffered poverty, sickness, or anything like, obviously you had sin in your life and God was punishing you. So it was very much the prosperity gospel where, the rich get richer and more beautiful because they're being blessed, and the poor and the afflicted are, something's wrong with them, and if they would just get their lives together, God would bless them too. And so that would have been an intrinsic lesson he would have held in that day and age as a religious belief, actually. So he would have, had that, and yet he still knew something was wrong, still felt something was missing, because he had his riches. Well, God obviously likes me and blesses me, and I have kept all the commandments just like they say, and yet he still felt empty.
Yeah, so he came to Jesus and he said, "What must I do to be saved?"
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus said, "Well, keep the commandments." And he's like, "Well, I've done that since I was a child." Mm-hmm. And so the difference being, okay, so then Jesus tells him to sell everything and give it to the poor. And that would have been the next step if he was actually living in a faith relationship with God, and keeping the commandments that he said he kept because of a love relationship with God. Then the next step would have been to continue that faith relationship and sell everything he had and give it to the poor. Mm-hmm. But in reality, he was keeping the commandments because it made him look good, rather than keeping the commandments because of his relationship with God.
It was a thing to do, a box to be checked, and the Bible says that, Jesus looked on him and loved him. And
yes, absolutely.
What it was, yes, he had this riches and he was keeping the commandments, and, but he had this sincere need and sincere depth of looking, and Jesus could see that like, this guy, he's missed it a little bit here, but he is really sincerely wanting this. And he was reacting to an internal truth that this kid had and didn't understand. And so that's why Jesus, gave him something to do to reveal, he sent them in that direction of truth. Do this, and you're going to find what you're missing. Do this. It's not a belief. It's not a philosophical debate. This is what you're missing right here. This is going to show you your greatest need, and you're going to come here and get it filled. And that's what, was what Jesus was responding to, what he saw in this kid, who then could not actually do it.
Yeah. So I think Jesus may have been making a point to the young man when he said, the young man says, "I've kept all his commandments." Mm-hmm. So Jesus said, "Go ahead and sell all that you have and then come follow me." Mm-hmm. I think that could very well have been a roundabout way of saying, you know what? You say you've kept the commandments. What are those first commandments? They are, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not bow down to any other god but me." And so he knew the young man held his riches as a god, and he bowed down to them. It was because he couldn't give it up. He turned and left, and he was sorrowful.
Well, he's saying, "I've kept all the commandments." And so really, then sell and give to the poor and come follow me, and that's love your neighbor and love God.
Yeah.
He was telling him, now, here's how you really live.
Yeah, here's how you really live out the commandments. Mm-hmm. And the young man was doing what he could up to that point, because he didn't know a different way to live. That's why he came to ask Jesus.
Yeah.
But when he found out, it was too hard, at least at that moment, it was too hard for him to do.
Yeah, we don't know what the rest of his life journey
later.
was.
That's right.
We do know, though, that this was the one and only person who turned down being a disciple, because this wasn't like Jesus and the woman at the well, and she went back to the town, and it was like people who were healed who, he sent back and did it. This was the guy who he gave the same invitation to him as he did Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Well, not Luke, but Matthew, Mark, John, and Peter, and James, and all those. And this was a disciple invitation. And this is the only person we know of that actually turned him down. There could have been 13 disciples.
Yeah, so at that moment, the rich young ruler was putting his faith in something he could see, which was his riches, of course, and his keeping of the commandments.
Yeah, he couldn't take a blind step of faith.
Yeah, he was putting his belief into his own, the words of man, basically, rather than the words of God.
Which at that point would have been the words of Jesus. He ascribed to Jesus this. I mean, he probably had an inkling, if not more, that this was the Messiah, and that's why he went to him.
Yeah,
and
he would have certainly had a really good education by the priests and such. His family could have certainly paid for that.
Yeah.
So he had to know all those prophecies and such things like that, and had access to that knowledge. So he may have very well studied it all out and thought, wow, this probably is the Messiah.
And maybe went into it, whatever this man tells me, I will do. And then when he tells him this, he didn't expect that.
It's like, oh, wait. But many times, we do come across an idea that we know is right. We don't particularly like it at the moment.
Yeah.
But Jesus will certainly keep bringing it back to our attention. And I don't doubt that Jesus offered many other opportunities for him to see an opportunity.
All lessons in life will
that.
be repeated until learned. That's what we say.
Right. So contrasting the rich young ruler with Noah. So Noah was mentioned in Hebrews 11, the great, the faith chapter that lists all the faithful greats in the Bible. Well, at least a lot of them. And so Noah had a thing that represented his faith too. It was the ark. Because that's what it says there in Hebrews 11. It says, so Noah lived by faith and he built the ark. So it was an action, like you talked about earlier. God didn't just sit there and discuss philosophy. He had concrete evidence, basically, actions that were what faith is. And all there in Hebrews 11, when it talks about faith and the living out, it is the living out, the actions of faith. It's not just this fluffy cloud theory, something that we talk about and hope we have and such. So so it was the ark that represented it was his thing that represented who God was. But you think about it, the ark was simply a representation of the words of God, right? God had told him to build this ark to save his family and whoever else might want to go with him. And they were Noah's faith in the words of God, and so he built the ark, which now represented faith. So there was that big old ark sitting there. And it had faith written all over it, basically.
Could have been on the very back. The SS Faith. Could have had a flag.
Could have. So Ephesians 2:8 says, we are saved by grace through faith, and that is not your own doing, it is a gift from God. Now the ark was a literal representation of being saved by faith. Was it not? And it was certainly a gift from God. And
so here was God's gift to humanity, the ark, salvation. And it was a literal, concrete object of a gift and a step of faith, because you had to step into the ark to be saved. And so it's a very concrete lesson, object lesson of give, faith, grace, save.
Right. It was certainly a gift from God, a salvation from the destruction of the world at that point in time. So while it may have seemed to be an inanimate object, it was built by the power of God's words. And it gave glory to God rather than to man or Noah who built it.
Yeah. And if you read the Spirit of Prophecies, Ellen White says that the ark would not have survived on its own, that, while the flood was going on, that, angels protected the ark. So it wasn't just, here's a boat, get in and it'll take care of you. It was a vessel of faith and grace all the way through. Because even in the flood, the ark needed God's protection to survive.
Right. And there was a difference between what the rich and young ruler had.
all of his inanimate objects that he ascribed power to, but their power saved nothing but his own pride. And see, faith and humility are synonymous, basically. It took some real humility, some real surrender to God to spend 120 years building a boat because God said to. I mean, seriously. God said it was going to rain. Rain was going to come out of the sky. Rain had never come out of the sky before. And it was going to pile up water on the earth. That hadn't happened before. So it's no wonder that people laughed. And the man sounded crazy because they ascribed power to their own words rather than the words of God.
So that was, it was, the rich young ruler's thing was, he had to give up what he owned and made him comfortable. And in Noah's day, you had to, I guess, probably survive the ridicule of those, oh, you're going to go in crazy Noah's boat, and so pride would have been a deterrent to get on the ark, too. You didn't want to be seen as, part of crazy Noah's, fantasy flood.
Yeah. Yep. And so the rich young ruler believed his riches proved that he was righteous, and he measured himself by what he had, and what he had proved how awesome he was. He was rich, and he relied on his riches and his keeping of the commandments as his salvation. But the keeping of the commandments did not lead to a faith relationship with God. But a faith relationship with God will lead, of course, to keeping the commandments. The words of God to us lived out by the power of faith, not the power of self. So the path that we choose in life is either created by God's words or by our words. Our belief system, we walk in our belief system. Are we going to walk in the words of God, or are we going to live out our own words? And so God wants to lead us on the faith journey where every day we build more of our own personal ark of faith. It's that all things work together for good, coming together to create our own ark of faith and our own faith in God. And even though many times it feels like we are blindfolded and being fed things that we have no idea how that can all work together for our good. And so we get to choose whether to believe that is coming together into a tasty chocolate chip cookie or some such thing like that. So back to that text that Aspen used, Ephesians 2:10, for we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things he has planned for us long ago. And that is just a journey, that is right there. It's a journey of faith. The things that he has pre-planned for us, and to believe that we are part of that recipe.
I used to hear a lot, and I still hear it every now and then. And I mean, it's okay. No, analogy is perfect. But you used to hear, "Oh, you're a mirror. You reflect Jesus." I'm reflecting Jesus, and I think that's actually misleading. You're not a mirror. You're a masterpiece. Like you were just saying, you're not reflecting. You are created, and so instead of trying to be a mirror and reflect an image, you are actually a masterpiece in the making.
We can't always see terribly clearly in the mirror, but as we follow more and more of the words of Jesus, our vision and our hearing to what he has to say becomes much more clear.
There's a scene from Bruce Almighty I really like. It's a Jim Carrey movie, which one of his better ones, I guess, but basically he meets God and he gets God's powers, and it's kind of a drama, comedy, philosophy thing. But one of the scenes is they're looking at these paintings, massive paintings, that are representative of people's lives. And there's one of a person, and at the time it was Lance Armstrong before the big fallout over his doping scandal. But anyway, there was this, big pictured Lance Armstrong who, was the biker who won the Tour de France so many times, but also had cancer and came back from it and everything. And the scene is where you see this massive painting, and it's him on a bike, and it's got a lot of bright and dark colors to it. And Morgan Freeman, the God character, is like, yes, well, Lance and I did this one together, and we couldn't have made this without some pretty dark hues, meaning the struggles and hard times in life. And I liked it because it's back to that. His life is a masterpiece of creation and experience and working with God. And I like the way that the line said, yeah, Lance and I did this together, which is what happens. We live together in that relationship with God, and that creates the masterpiece of our life, of the experiences we have that sometimes are sweet, sometimes sour, sometimes bright, sometimes dark, but they all come together in the end to make a beautiful, amazing masterpiece of God's work and you.
Yes, a great explanation of faith.
It's a pretty decent movie. So, Evan Almighty is not so bad. That's the sequel. It's actually Noah. It's a modern day Noah.
Oh.
So there you go.
In this family, Brett watches all the movies.
Yeah.
And I read all the books. I
You
don't
brought
know.
Noah up, and it's like, oh, hey, Evan Almighty. All right, so went off on that. Anyway, yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on next week.
I don't either just yet. Usually I got an idea going, but we'll find something.
Find something out.
Yep.
So have a great rest of your Sabbath day. Awesome 4th of July. Enjoy. Don't set anything on fire if you're out there in the West. And yeah, we'll...
Speaking of that, the freedom represented by the 4th of July. I mean, when we dare to walk that journey of faith, that's freedom. That's freedom from being set free of constantly comparing ourselves to others, trying to live up to the standard of doing more and having more to be more. That journey of faith is absolute freedom, even if sometimes we cannot see at the moment because it's a bit dark.
Yeah.
It's freedom. It's freedom from having to live by the masters of the world.
Yep. So, quick plug for Aspen's Instagram. She's starting an Instagram thing with pictures. We have the freedom to support our daughter in her social media efforts. It's fun.
Yeah, she's having fun.
And trying to think anything else. Nope.
No,
Okay.
no, we're celebrating 4th of July today, though, with our son and his wife are coming over again, and
Yep, Colby and Autumn. Oh, and thoughts and prayers to Merle and Lay, friend of ours who's sounds like he's on his way to recovery. We hope and pray that he's getting better out there in Colorado. So if you guys happen to see this, you are definitely in our thoughts and prayers. And go Merle, get better.
yes, absolutely. And we received a message from Rachel Clark last night as well.
Oh,
Yeah, she's sick with COVID as well.
so yeah, be careful out there. It's still kind of a pandemic world in a way. Germs. It's Aspen's theme for life. Germs. Yeah. All right. Have a great rest of your Sabbath day. Enjoy your 4th of July. And